Hello and welcome to the video. This is my full review of this model here. Now this is the AtomRC Seal. I've looked at its brothers, which was the AtomRC Dolphin, which I love, and also the AtomRC Killer Whale. Now, interested to get this one in because it's very similar in layout to lots of other models, Skywalkers, Bixlers and things. Quite a bit more expensive, and just wondered what it was going to be like. Now I've been flying it enough now to make an informed review, so I thought I'd put some footage together of the maiden flight, but also talk about some of the setup tips because it didn't go entirely according to plan, and this sometimes happens, but the good thing is I can do the crashes so you don't have to. Now before we get into the maiden footage, let me just very quickly go through how I've set this up. There is a manual in the box and it is quite basic, but if you follow it along it isn't particularly tricky to put together. Now I checked all the servos were good on the bench just before I put them all in. This is a standard thing that I do. If you don't do this, I'd recommend doing it. Get yourself a servo checker, particularly with the cheaper servos. It pays to just check them and exercise them before you put them in. Set them at 1500 and put the control horns on. And then hot glued them into position. The ball joints that are supplied for the hinges are a very nice addition, slightly higher quality than just some of the other stuff I've seen in the past, but do watch the screw lengths. The screw lengths that attach the ball links and the control horns and everything are a different length. The two longer ones are for the wings, the two shorter ones are for the tail. Don't swap them around like I did, else you'll have to take things apart. Nothing tricky on the radio setup, doesn't have flaps. The only thing I did do was reduce the throws for the elevator, aileron and rudder to 50%. That gave me about the right travel on the control surfaces. I'll talk about that at the end. And I did have to eyeball the throws on this model because they're not in the manual. Come on, AtomRC. This is basic information and it should be included in the manual. Now, in terms of how I have set the plane up for this initial flight, I've set it on the balance point. I'm using a 4000 mAh battery that sits nicely in the battery tray and it's bang on the CG marks. I've also put the control surfaces directly in line with the wing and the vertical and horizontal feathers at the back, so there's no up elevator or anything on here. I want to see how it goes. Now, a lot of these models tend to fly in a way that when you first launch them, they sink towards the ground and then you can kind of catch them and take off. So I'm kind of expecting that to happen in this maiden flight as well. It may need a little bit of up elevator to help with that, but I've got my trusty camera on here. Big shout out to Adam for helping with this maiden flight, and he's going to throw it for me just so I've got the best possible chance of catching it and not crashing it. Although in a moment, as you'll see, it doesn't always work out. The other thing you'll spot is I have just rigged up an FPV pod onto the FPV canopy. Nothing particularly fancy here, but I just thought it'd be interesting to get some FPV footage to see what the view is like rather than use the camera mount that's actually at the front. So, getting ready to do the first launch. I'm going to give it pretty much full power and Adam will give it a good strong throw. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, throttle.
Oi.
Okay,
I think it needs a bit of up trim. Definitely a bit of up trim.
And as you can see, disaster, straight into the ground. Now, fantastically, there wasn't a lot of damage, even though the ground here in Cheshire at the moment is particularly hard. We've had some nice weather, so it's almost like throwing it into concrete. The underlying skid that was on there got a little bit rumpled up, but the rest of the model is absolutely fine. There's no problems at all. Even the foam hadn't deformed, which is really good. Some of these longer noses, and particularly on things like Bixlers, do tend to just get bent all out of shape and it looks like the nose on a boxer rather than when it was beautiful and came out the box. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding a couple of millimeters of up elevator, and the feedback from Adam was that there was an incredible amount of thrust coming out of this big prop, so we probably didn't need full throttle. That will also help with torque roll on takeoff as well. So with that little bit of 2mm up elevator put into the control at the back and not using full beams, we'll try again.
To be honest, I'm less
That's
interested in that because we've also
Yeah.
managed to screw the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's why we do it.
That's it.
So other people don't have to have the same issues.
Yeah.
Right, okay. We'll try that again. Maybe not full power then.
Yeah, because it seemed to have plenty of then, plenty.
Okay, here we go. You ready?
Good oak. Yes.
And away it goes, sailing into the sky, no problems at all. Now, I'm not sure you'll hear it on the audio, but something just went through the prop. Now, one of the issues that I had was the little latch had popped off in the crash, needed a bit of hot glue to pop that back in, and our worry was that that had popped out and gone through the prop. However, it's flying absolutely beautifully.
Yeah. Was that still wanting to nose down? Was it? Or was it?
No, with the input that we had, she was actually pretty good.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to get a little bit more height as being close to this edge. Just instant trimming to cheat here.
Yeah.
That is actually
Very nice. Yeah.
It's not very loud, is it?
No.
So I'm at about 50% throttle.
Yeah. How are your throws?
Incredibly stable.
Yeah.
Throws I think are pretty good.
Yeah.
Definitely need some up elevator on the launch
Yeah.
from that disaster. However,
So on this 4,000 milliamp hour pack, I'm getting about, believe it or not, 40 minutes of flight time. It is sipping the power. You don't need an awful lot of throttle to get this through the air. It is incredibly floaty. You can turn the throttle off and it will just float around, particularly in this configuration as I have it here, which is the broader wingspan with the 1500 wings. Very, very gentle in flight. We were playing with the stall characteristics. If you can call it a stall, it is incredibly gentle and doesn't drop a wing. It just does the standard things that these big, high wing, low wing loaded models tend to do, is that it just kind of gently pushes its nose back down. So there is absolutely no surprises. It's incredibly easy to fly and has fantastic manners.
ready? There you go, my friend.
Thank
All
you
yours.
very much. Cheers.
FPV is working.
Yeah. Let's reminds me just of the Bixler, really.
It is very
Yeah,
pixelery. It's
it is.
very Skywalkery. It
Definitely.
is very, very forgiving to fly.
Yeah. When you've got it trimmed to perfection. It's perfect.
I think we're also a bit lucky because the weather's so nice.
Yeah, there's no wind, is
There's
it? It's
literally
great.
not a
but,
breath of wind. So you can definitely, but I think the tips for takeoff is 50-60% throttle is loads,
yeah, yeah.
and you need a good 2 or 3 millimeters of up elevator
Yeah.
to stop it doing what it does.
Now this is very floaty indeed, and the only thing I'm seeing in the playing that we're doing here is there is a slight change in pitch with varying power levels. So as I increase the power, the nose is pushed up. As I take the power off, the nose is dropping a little bit. So that's an indicator that the thrust angle could be a little bit better.
Okay, do you want to try a stall?
Give it a go. Alright, going up.
Oh, that's
That's-
very
that's
gentle.
it. So I'm holding the elevator now, fully back, and I'm still steering it, no problem whatsoever. That's full up elevator now.
Okay,
and it's completely controllable.
She is very, very forgiving. So no nasty stall at all, not even a wing drop.
Not the slightest, no. I don't think you could stall it if you tried.
Oh, I bet there are people out there who can.
Get it low and slow enough. But no, that's, yeah.
So, having flown it a little bit now, what is my overall review? Well, it's a calm, wonderful, relaxing experience to fly. Central gravity appears spot on, and it's easy to get that central gravity balance with a decent sized battery. They're talking about 3000 milliamp hour 4S packs in the manual. I just happen to use a 4000 because I could get the balance right with what I had in it here. No flight controller or anything. And recommend about 10 to 12 millimeter throws are what you're going to need on all the control surfaces, and the sound is much less than you'd expect. A cruise throttle, you can't hear it once it's a couple of 100 yards away, and I would say cruise throttle for this is potentially only about 30-40% throttle. Once you get over 50, you can really hear the noise from the prop. It almost feels like there's a little bit too much power. It is really good. Endurance is excellent. It is very efficient with lots of poke for launches, and then once you're in the air you can really cut that back, conserve your battery, and just have a lovely long flight time. Speed envelope is huge as well. Once you're at altitude, you can cut the motor and you can float around, and because of the incredibly gentle stall characteristics, you don't have to worry about it suddenly letting go and spiraling into the ground. Definitely not a speed machine, but a great glider and soarer. And it seems to be pretty robust too. Seems to be taking most of the knocks in its stride. Only a couple of things that I'd mention here. The fit on the foam isn't as great as I'd like for a model of this price. There are little gaps. I'm not sure whether that's because it's been bounced around in transport to me here, but I would really have loved to seen a little bit more work, maybe having balsa edges to some of the wings and other pieces. There should be a way to make the wings and tail removable a lot faster. I am having to take it apart to do that. There is little screws in the wings themselves that grab the carbon fibre spar, but for this price point I'd really like there to be little latches or catches for both the tail and the wings to make it easy to swap things around and for you to be able to change from the 1500 to 1100 millimeter setups. So I have a few setup tips if you are going to invest in one of these things. I'd launch at 67% throttle, that's going to be loads. Give yourself a little up elevator to give you a chance of not nosing over into the ground. Secure the GPS cover and glue in the hatch catch. Now those are two things that popped out. My GPS cover is gone forever. It came out on that maiden flight and was lost. We couldn't find it even though the crops in the field had already been taken out. And also make sure that the battery in your radio and your goggles is fully charged. If you're going to be flying for that length of time, you have to worry about batteries in other things. The challenge for many pilots with this model will be the cost. A Bixler 3 is a lot less, Sky Surfer is 2, and the trusty old Bixler 1.1 is about 40 quid for the kit. So this is a lot more expensive. Now there is more room, and that's a really nice idea for modern electronics, so you can get your flight control and stuff in easily, but I'm sure for lots of people they're quite willing to figure that out on these cheaper models to try and get a similar result as with this AtomRC seal. I do wish they'd thought about wing removal and used some of the modern connectors that you get so that the wings clipped on and were easy to remove as well, with things like thumb screws rather than something that you have to use an Allen key for. I may use the Velcro trick to keep the wings in place on mine. I use that first in my mini Drac build. It's just a way to put Velcro on the underneath, a couple of little pieces, just to help make sure the wings don't move in flight. Although to be honest, this isn't really going to be an acrobatic model. This is a fantastic soarer and explorer. And the last thing that I have a question about is the availability of spares, because some of the cheaper, older, less modern competitors, it's much easier to get spares and they're more widely available. So what next with this model? Well, I'm tempted to install a flight controller and create a new little mini-series. Lots of requests in the original video for Ardu plane, so I'll run a poll and install the winner, and we'll take it out and give it another try. Maybe a little head tracker action too. So in summary, if you're looking for a big model of this type that is going to put loads of weight in it, and also have lots of room for flight controllers too. This is a really nice model, but for some the price point will be a little bit too rich when compared to a lot of the competitors who maybe don't have as much room inside but have almost identical flying characteristics. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organised into easy to follow playlists that if you're trying to learn a topic will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.